Howdy peeps and peoples. Okay, I've been wanting to do this video for a little bit. I've been trying to get to it, and I thought I actually lost it. And Wayne had to send the footage again in the mail to me because I thought I lost it. The day after he sent it, he found it on my computer. I said, hey, found it. He goes, it's already in the mail. I'm so sorry, Wayne. Wayne with friends like me who needs enemies. You know what I mean? So anyways, Wayne come in, done some recording again, and freaking killed it. I'm telling you, I think you're all gonna like this. I love it because it's a different perspective and it ain't my crap. And I actually don't have to do the recording. I could actually just do my job, and Wayne records. So guys, this is something Wayne's doing for us. Please, if anybody likes this, give Wayne some kudos on this. Hope y'all like this. Howdy peeps, I'm editing this video up. I'm coming back. I done did all my cuts, and I'm coming back now to do my voiceover. And man, Wayne, thank you, buddy. This is cool. What you're gonna see in this video now that I've done this cutting and stuff, or not timber cutting, edit cutting, is you're gonna see how this field, see that field road? Now watch this truck come winding through here like a salamander. I pulled up the map on what's the name of my app? Hunt Stand, and excuse me, I mapped out the road that Junkie's driving on, and on Hunt Stand from Stevie's Den to the Knuckle Boom, it's 1 mile and 1/10. That's the distance of his haul, his trip. Now, they're on this, that being said, let me show you on the map here. They're down here on this south side of the property. And Junkyard's got to cross the county road, which goes fine. We got to, as long as you make a, Junkie, as long as you make a entrance to a county road, to where you drop down onto the road and then cross and pick back up off the road. You don't want to climb onto a county road. You want to drop down onto it. As long as you're dropping down onto a county road, it's not a problem. It's just when you're climbing onto one, that's when it becomes a problem. It starts chipping away on pavement when you get on, because the edges of a county road's got moisture in it. So it's not as supported as well. So no, this went great. Everything went great. Long distance, long haul, and to be able to truck that distance, they knocked us out, I think, in a day and a half or 2 days of den-denning. Derek and Roger started out cutting this, and then Roger had to do something today, I forget what, and Robin's on Roger's skidder. But I think it took, see now Stevie in the truck, when we're logging, full bore logging like we're doing right now, Stevie in the truck in Junkyard, Stevie in Junkyard can move about almost what two cutting teams can pull out. So usually me and Brutus will take a skidder, and Derek will take a skidder. Derek and Titus will take a skidder. Me and Brutus will take a skidder. And we'll start packing the mail there, you know, and Stevie can come in behind us and get the thing rolling. But when you start a job, you're starting from scratch. So here's the dilemma. Derek and him started a day early while we was moving equipment. I moved Derek's cutter in the end of last week, and Derek and them went and got Roger's skidder Monday, and then they started cutting. And then me and Stevie, I think, went back and got Whitey, Den, Brutus, I don't know what. We spent a day moving equipment, and they spent a day cutting ahead. But now, it don't take Stevie and them long to be right back to nipping at the ankles of a single team. So, but I just use it as we had to get this priority done first. We had to get this south side of the road done first, weather-wise. And we just use that for an opportunity to slow Stevie and the truck back a little bit while we get the north end's more complex. The south end's longer. But the north end takes more dozer work and organizing and trying to get ahead before they show up with the hauling crew, with the whacking and hauling crew here. So we're holding Stevie and Junkie up a bit on this end down here, but by the time they get done with this south end, which has less timber on it than the north end by a good bit, by the time they get done with this south end, we'll have the north end to where they can get up there and start hammering down after the rain comes through. So I know that was a bit of information, a bit of a spiel there, but just trying to catch you all up to date on what's going on. Now in this video, we're just going to cover Stevie and Junkie and Derek and Robin. We'll cover half the crew, the bigger half of the crew, in this video, working the south side. Now in the next video, in the next Start Studios video, we're going to cover Big Mama on the Knuckle Moon and me on Brutus and Big Daddy on the bulldozer. If he's got footage of Big Daddy in the dozer, I think he does, but I'm not sure. I don't remember. I've slept since then. I don't even remember if Big Daddy's on this video or was here on the job at the time. You know, this footage was shot, I think, the very end. Yes, the middle of November is when this footage was shot. It's right before Thanksgiving, I do believe. Is that right, Wayne? It was either the middle or right after Thanksgiving. It says right around there. Right around November, Thanksgiving type of deal is when this was done. No, it would have had to been. No, it'd have been right at Thanksgiving. Right before or after or something like that, Thanksgiving. And Stevie's down low in the edge of this, in this sod field at the edge of this woods. The good thing about, one cool thing about Tiny is they trucked all this out and it still had sod on the ground on the haul road. Now you can see when you're skidding, it's like plowing with a small plow. When you're skidding, you're churning dirt. But with Tiny, he's just staying on top, and he moved around a little bit. Junkie moved around a little bit with Tiny, and they managed to haul this stuff out without tearing the sod up on the haul road, which is important because in the distance of 1.1 miles, you can make a lot of open ground in that kind of distance. So it was pretty sweet to have Tiny be able to do that. So you're keeping erosion down. And I just get lost. I do this every time Stevie does that. We do these videos. That din to me is just amazing. I love the way that thing operates. And of course Stevie's getting real slick on this thing. I mean, he's slicker than Minter's Wee Whopper on this thing. Now, this is a red oak, black oak. Them little branches are called epidermics. They're suckers. So what's going on is either that tree was growed at the edge of a woods or that tree was dying. They start throwing out them suckers and epidermics, you know, when a tree starts getting unhealthy. You see how the end of that tree's tapered? That's how Derek on Titus is great, and Titus is an economical way to get him cutting. And Titus does a heck of a job. I'm not trying to take anything away from Titus, but there's some maneuvers he can't do real good. He can't come down and cut a top off straight. So he kind of has to tilt his head forward. Now, Wayne did good and got some footage of Derek topping, so you can see how Titus does his maneuver there. But the main thing Titus is doing is getting the trees down without tearing up the woods and knocking the top out of it so it can be, so the stem can be removed from the area. And then it brings it down, and Stevie does a lot of his cleanup. So when you're running Titus in this hardwood timber, it's a pretty big, you rely on it pretty heavily to do, you rely on a dent pretty heavily to clean the things up. Now watch this little maneuver. I don't know if I think that was a saw log you left on there, but watch this, watch this. Oh, Stevie, that was a slick one. And he'll utilize that little skinny stem for pulpwood. But the consistency of this, that's what gets this style logging, is consistency. It's fast, yet it's consistent. See, and there's a pile on the left of the skidder up there. You see that big pile of wood to the left? That's stuff that Roger and Derek had got ahead the day before. But Stevie and Tawny will munch right through that pile in a hurry. It's amazing when you get wood ahead of him. Now when you're just hand and mouth, when you're just feeding him, meter feeding him, you can hold him back a bit. But when you give Stevie a pile, you give the Den and Tawny a pile of wood, you're in trouble, because they'll move that pile of wood and lickety daggone split. And think about it. Think about how the economics of that. You're moving this many log yard is 1.1 miles of a skid, and they move it out of there lickety split, just because of the economics that Tawny's adding to it, you know. You really close your gap. That's the one thing. You don't you expose much ground. You know, you're not killing your dozer man on finished work, or, you know, being hard on Mother Nature, opening up a bunch of ground. Because usually where Tawny travels, he don't affect ground too much. Even moving that kind of a load, you're not affecting ground that much. Them floaters on it. It sure don't take them long. Now Wayne goes up in the woods and gets Derek cutting and the skidder running, but it don't take them long to munch through that big old pile of stuff. It don't take them long at all. That consistency and, you know, rinse and repeat. Come back, I'll see you in the morning type of stuff. You know what I mean? And that's another thing that I've kind of noticed. I followed Titus around a lot when we cut before he had a dumper truck, and before he had Tiny, and the inefficiency of that compared to the efficiency of just dragging it out, stockpiling it, you know, and then bending it. I think we was wrong doing that. Some of it's necessary because now Brutus cuts the steeper ground, and we're utilizing Titus more on the better laying ground now. But before, and there's time, and Derek can do any kind of type of ground. I ain't trying to say that he can do any ground there is to do. He can handle all that. He's a very experienced logger. But it's just the cutter. You're more better off cutting a steeper ground with Brutus, because he's kind of made to handle that, and then letting Titus handle the easier laying ground. But when you're on easier laying ground with Titus, it's easy to knock tops out of them and just drag them to a centralized spot, so the Den can really get in his groove of doing his thing. Stevie gets in his tunnel vision going and gets in his groove here, man. He can just munch through it, and keep chucking it on the truck and get him out of there. And then you're out in the woods. It helps with hydraulic machines, but out in the woods, you're dealing with the holdups, the slowdowns, the aggravating this, the pain in the butt that makes your stop and go happen. When you get out there in the yard, it's just wham bam, thank you ma'am. You know what I mean? That type of thing. Now here's Titus running, and it's I think it's been a while since I had much Titus footage. Now, Derek's running it. Derek's like me. He's a jack of all trades, and very big player out of their company, and pretty much grew up with him. I've known him since he was a kid, you know, and very solid nerves. He's a good team player. He works well with others, and got very solid nerves and a big old set of brass balls. And the key to running this cutter, the key to it, that it is a definite must, is the big old set of brass balls. Because you're kind of on the jagged edge with this thing, which is kind of attractive as a job. I really like running Titus. Because there's you got to do a lot of, how do I say this? You got to do a lot of tricks to get it to do the job that we're doing. It's not straightforward. It's like you see a lot of stuff in like a pine plantation or something where they're just taking these on flat ground and just knocking a pine tree, picking a pine tree up, carrying it over to a thing and dropping it down, or scooping up 3 tiny trees and dropping it down. This ain't that type of cutting. This type of cutting. Now, Derek grew up in the woods. He grew up doing this, and it's a must. The guy that's running the cutter has to grow up around it. Yeah, you can't hardly in a select cut. Now, you could in a clear cut, somebody could probably step right into it. But in a select cut, the guy that runs the cutter is a guy that grew up around logging. You know, when he was a baby, he was carrying a gas can, that type of thing. And he slung chainsaw a lot. He's got a lot of experience of slinging chainsaw, and learned his abilities slinging saw. So he already knows, like when you cut a red oak tree, how the red oak tree is going to act. If you're cutting a hickory tree, how's this hickory tree going to act? If you're cutting a maple, how's it going to act? And when you're on a north slope, how's the tree going to act on a north slope, south slope, east slope, west slope, towards the top of a hill, around a fence row, around an old clear cut that's growing back. You know, all that type of stuff. In a good logger, he could just drive through the woods and he don't have to look up that much. You know, when you're greener as a logger, and we've all been there, so if you're a green logger, don't take no offense to none of this, okay? But when you're a greener logger, you have so much trouble judging the landscape, judging the trees, judging the fibers of the trees. And there's no shortcut to it. You got to do it a bunch. You got to be paying attention to your details. Everything's in the details, and you got to do a bunch of it to learn it. And like when I'm running Brutus, I don't hardly even look up the trees most of the time. You know, I get on a big one, I stop and do it. You know, but you just get used to the trees that are standing around it. You're looking at the greener you are, you tend to look at the tree, the exact situation you're in. When you get more experienced, and I'm talking, I don't know when that kicks in, but you get kind of more intuition. You kind of go off intuition more than you do studying each individual tree. You can walk into an area and you just say, well, these trees are going here, this tree's going over there, that tree's going over there. And you almost don't have to look up. You know, when you're cutting with a chainsaw, you definitely do. But when you got a hydraulics, you know you're close to where the tree's going to go, to where you can give it a little nudge and it'll go in the way you want it to go. If it don't quite favor exactly where you think it's going to favor. But that's based off of sunlight. You get used to where the sunlight's coming in at. That's based off of sunlight, what's standing around it, what's been cut there before. You know, you see old stumps and stuff when you're working and stuff like that. It's just a real hard thing to explain. You know, I'm not trying to make a timber cutter out like he's some kind of god, and we're not that. But we've been doing this for years. Me and Derek and Stevie and Rob and Roger and Junkie. You know, it ought to count for something. You know what I mean? It ought to count for something. So that's where you get your intuition, is what I'm trying to say. I was kind of rambly there, but it's neat to watch these good operators do this. I got to edit this thing, and I just got to stare at it. I'm like, damn it, you're supposed to edit. You don't start paying attention to your job, Tater. Cause when Wayne come in and done this, you know, every bit of this footage is Wayne. And when Wayne come in and done this, he allowed all us to be workers and just doing our working job. You know, instead of having to think about the YouTube mess on top of all the other stuff. And then when I'm YouTubing, unless somebody takes my camera, Stevie takes my camera from time to time, you know, and I'm gonna try to start giving it out some. But unless they take my camera and just take it over and do their thing and do whatever they want to do, it gets too much footage of me doing my thing anyways, because I got to stay close to my camera, because I got to keep the momentum up. I can't play with the camera and it be aggravating, like I got to take it over here and set it up where the proper trajectory is and stuff. And that's one thing Wayne told me. He said, now hey, he said, when I come in and do this, he said, I can get the sun to my back, which is key when you're recording. He said, I can get the sun to my back, I can get things in the right proper frame, and then all I got to think about is how to get this done and, you know, not be in the wrong spot. Now Wayne, I can done tell you, I can't see up that tree, but where Derek's cutting, I can done tell you Wayne is perfectly safe where he's standing. You know why? Because of that big tree standing on the other side of the tree Derek's cutting. The tree he's cutting is leaning behind him and to his left. That's where the tree he's cutting is going to be leaning. I can guarantee you that's where that tree's going. You see what I mean? That's the type of intuition I'm talking about. And it ain't really, I don't know if it's intuition or just seen a bunch of them. But the red oak on this side of that tree that Derek's getting ready to cut, that would be leaning towards where Wayne's standing. And he's hiding behind a chinky pin there. Now watch this tree. I guarantee it does exactly. There it goes. There it goes. Exactly where he wanted to go. See what I mean? Because the tree was standing right beside it, that tells you they're going to go away from each other. You know why? Because they're competing for the same sunlight. So one tree says, all right, you take this side and I'll take that side. And that's how we're going to lean. So as you walk through the woods, you know your north, south, east, and west slopes tells you one thing, because your sun's more intensive from the south and the west. But also, what factors into it is what's standing beside it. If he's standing in the middle of a field that's flatter than a flitter, and there's no trees around him, you can walk up to that tree blindfolded with a compass and cut that tree southwest, and that tree's going to fall on its own. Guarantee you. Okay, in the northern hemisphere. You know, I don't know about if you're watching this from Australia, you know, or Brazil. Don't try that. I think it'd have to be northeast, maybe. I don't know, or is it northwest? Anybody in the southern hemisphere, let me know. It's like a toilet water, you know, your toilet water flowing. But anyway, so here's the red oak. Now this tree that he's getting ready to cut is going to be favoring Wayne a bit. But if Derek's doing his thing, you know, all this is going to, it obviously ain't too bad because it's a lot bigger tree. So it's going to be towering over the other tree a bit. But I'm sure Derek will try to take it straight down the hill. And what he's doing here is he's making two cuts on the face cut. So you kind of mimic, when you're using a rubber tire cutter, you kind of mimic cutting with a chainsaw. It's not like when you're cutting with Brutus, there's situations it's like that, yes. But there's a lot of situations you're thinking kind of like the Din Din. But with this thing, you're thinking like a chainsaw and a skidder. That's the best way I could put it. With a chainsaw and a skidder, you're trying to cut your stumps where you got a hinge. You got hinge wood you can rely on. You're going to make a face cut so the tree's got pivot room. And then you're going to use hydraulic power and your traction power to push it down the direction you want it. But you're going to keep it connected to the stump somewhat because you don't have side tilt and you don't have head tilt. So you're kind of using timber cutting style, face cut, back cut mentality. Face cut's your front cut with the opening. Back cut, your cut behind the hinge. And then you're using that kind of hinge to set the tree up where it's going. See how I set that right there? And then as the tree goes off the stump, you kind of push it off the stump, so then it's not connected. It's great cutting with the rubber cutter in the aspect of, as the tree's falling, you can push on through the stump, and then the tree is sitting on a lubricated steel plate. So any obstacle it hits in the treetop, in the canopy up there, it can roll right, it can roll left, it can hang up, and you can tilt your head back and back out from under it when you can, and pull it down. You know, if you get it lodged or something. You know, there's a lot of goods there. It's not perfect, but this machine is daggone. It really impressed me how well it accommodated us when we got into this rubber tire cutter. I was real impressed. Now we got on the front of this cutter, we got 43-inch tires on 26-inch rim, 25-inch rims, excuse me. And they got double ring chains on them. Now, with that wide stance and them double ring chains, there's a lot of things that's being done there. It's the wide tires, of course, helps with your flotation, but it also really helps crawling up on top of trees to do the topping. So you'll see, take one tire and climb up on top of a tree to knock the top out of it. You kind of tend to throw your trees out in an opener spot to where you can drive around the side of them and crawl up on top of them and stab the saw through them and knock the top out of them. And then you pull it out and clean it up with another machine like the Den. But also that double bear claw, that double ring chain that's on them tires. You see how they got two big rings in the center? The double ring chain helps you claw onto a piece of wood to help pull your machine up on top of it. And the wider tires makes it less, it's like using a pry bar. It's like giving you a longer pry bar to climb up on the tree. With skinnier tires, it's harder for the machine to climb up on a tree. With wider tires, the machine can climb up on a tree easier because they're not tilting the machine as hard to get the job done. So you're not lifting up as much metal when you pick up on top of one. Good job, Derek. I could watch him. I've watched him and Stevie all day here, and Robin. The back tires in that rig is 34s, and what they are is they're more traction tires. They're flotation tires, but they're more for traction. So, and the weight of a cutter is on the back, and the back axle oscillates, so you can get on a hillside and stuff, and your front tire come off the ground. You kind of climb up with the hillside on three wheels type of thing. But the way that machine's designed, the tires almost, I had to put a block in it when I put them 43s on there so the tires wouldn't rub when you cut the steering wheel. The thing has got such a tight turning radius, and that plays a big part. The axles being close together and a tight turning radius plays a big part of that thing getting around the woods the way it does. It can wiggle around into places you wouldn't think a big machine like that could drive right into. And it's the turn radius and the tight axle configuration. You'll see that here in a minute, I think. Towards the end of this, I think Wayne gets him topping a tree that's a real slick angle where you can see, I don't know when this pops up. Surely we should get getting close here. And then he can use the skis to, there's teeth on there, and I always thought if I had spent more time on Titus, I was going to get a torch and welder out and do some modifications on it to make it scoop better, make it push better, like I do on a skidder. On a skidder, you know, a lot of times on the corner of the blades, I'll add points, you know, for goring trees. You can gore a tree in the butt and then push it around, guide it through the woods, you know, snake it around through the woods with your blade when necessary. You really see a couple of these shots that Wayne's got here. You can really see the double ring chains on them tires, which are very important. The way them chain hooks, there's bars, there's steel bars welded on them rings and big rings, and when you lean over, it gives them hooks to bite into the tree where you can lift yourself up on that tree. Them hooks grab onto the piece of, kind of like claws on a cat, you know, it climbs you up on top of the tree. And there's Robin coming up here. They're getting
where they're working pretty close. Now down there behind Robin, you see that field down there. That's where they're skidding. It's all downhill skid. This hillside's all going downhill, which makes Robin's job easier because he's skidding downhill instead of uphill, but it makes Derek's job harder because all the trees he's got to push up the hill against the lean. But where he's at right now, he's getting right at the crest, the top of the hill, so some of the trees will fall. You know, you want to face your butts to where. Now this one got hung up, and Wayne shut the video off on this one. I don't know how. I'm sure they either Robin grabbed it with the skidder and pulled it down, or Derek got sideways on it and picked up on it and, you know, followed it down. Which I love that. If you're going to hang one up, hang it up close, and you could just don't hurt a thing. You can just slide the butt out from under it and drop the tree where she sits. You know, drop the top where it's at. If you see what I mean, kind of just pull the butt out from under it and let it fall straight down. I'm waiting for this angle. But it took me a while to get them tires and chains and stuff just right on Titus. It takes the higher horsepower feller buncher to run this Quadco head. It's a Quadco 22-inch head on this thing. And it takes a bigger horsepower engine to be able to scoop a big heavy tree and back up the hill with it. While your blade's trying to build, you're trying to back up the hill. And there's times you can pull the engine down quite a bit. That's a Cummins in it. Those of you got on me on the Cummins things, this is a Cummins in Titus. Now this here, yeah, he got the butt pushed out, but it's no harm, no foul. He's checking right now, and he's like, all right, I'm gonna let him go. And a tree fell out there in the open, and no big deal. But that experience in Derek's, see how well this thing climbs over wood? Any skidder operator out there, look at that. All the skidder men, look at this. And look how close them tires come to rubbing. This was the spot I was telling you about. It really shows you the geometry of this. I mean, this is Hydroax engineering. Hydroax kind of really was the big dog back in the day. And I'm telling you, that was a good design. They had a good thing going there. And these are 43s on Irma here. Robin's on the skidder. And they can look at that ground. Of course, that's pretty good ground. And this is before the rain, so the ground was still in pretty good shape. It's just getting a time of year to where the ground's really starting to go. It's really going to start going south pretty quick. It's getting up close to Thanksgiving, and sometimes that run will get you all the way to the new year, and sometimes by the 1st of December it's crap. But this is a good type of forgiving type of ground. This ground it's got limestone type of ground, and so it behaved pretty well. Now the only downfall with Titus is you get a lot of see that forked one. You really got to have a good skidder man when you're cutting with Titus. It can be done just fine, but you can't put a dummy on a skidder. He's got to be a good skidder man, because you can't get your forks knocked out of the trees with Titus. So, but the good news is when you get a weird forked tree and your skidder man you see how we're doing this. We're just skidding a short distance. I mean, Robin ain't skidding out of sight from Derek. I mean, he's just skidding right down the hill. And that allows you to, when you get a tree in a weird spot, or you get a tree with a weird fork that you can't get out, you can take the cutter man can get behind it on the top of the tree and guide it around something to help. So it's like skidding a tree out with two skidders till you get to the skid road, and it can be straight down to the yard. But it's something you got to be mindful of because you can't cut the forks. Some forks you can cut out, but very few of them. It's hard to cut the forks out with the cutter. Now, Stevie's not measuring this one. When you get a forked tree, you don't have to measure. You're just cutting the forks out. Reason being is that double heart, he's cutting off the chunk that's got the double heart in it right now. And I think he's going to bring that piece around. He's going to use that for a parking cone for Tiny. Don't forget that chunk. He's using that for a parking cone. Now, the thing about that chunk of wood that he cut off is that double hard is hard on the resaw at the mill. So you tend to take the double hard out. So when you're sawing on a resaw at the sawmill, it won't hit that double hard and wander. That saw blade is thin, and you know, it's hard to put up with something like you're sawing real soft wood and all of a sudden you hit a hard double hard. And if your band ain't super sharp, and you know, which it don't stay super sharp for long, then the daggone thing will wander, you know. So it's good practice out in the woods to get that double hard out of there, especially if you're selling to a band mill, which we're not selling these logs, we're sawing these logs, we're selling lumber. We buy timber and we sell lumber. That's what our company does. So we're not just a logging company. If you're just tuning into this, we're a sawmill too. Now, Tiny, especially in this situation, Tiny and Stevie is so much quicker than the actual cutting crew that the skidder man tends to take priority over keeping the truck running, if that makes sense. So in this situation, Stevie's keeping Junkie sitting there and Tiny waiting on Stevie to get done. There's another double hard he's cutting out. Let's see what he does here. Short log. Junkyard's sitting there waiting patiently because Stevie's going to do what he can to get the chute cleaned out. I call it cleaning the chute out where the skidder drops the trees. So Stevie's going to get the chute cleaned out there before the skidder man gets back. And then when he gets things right and ready and all looking kosher and fine and dandy, then he'll back Junkie head in and go chucking some logs on him. But he don't want to back him in until he's got a chute clean, because that's kind of his priority at this point with what they got going on, because the truck can catch up anytime. Look at the mud on the end of that log. Now most of our logs don't get too muddy because of the mechanized logging. That really helps at the mill. But somehow this one got muddy. There he's backing him in. Now watch Junkyard use that traffic cone Stevie's got for him. Now, there's a video coming up. I'll give you all a heads up. Those of you watching this is liking what you're seeing. I got a video coming up the next one or two. Not the next one, because the next one's going to be the north side of the road up there with me and Brutus and Big Mama and maybe Big Daddy on a dozer. But the next video after that, I'm not sure how it should be Stevie's video he does. He does a really cool one with the truck, loading a truck on the other side, and he does explaining cutting up, and it's as he's cutting up and as he sees it. It turned out great. I'm really proud of that one. I highly recommend those of you that's liking this to come on in and check that out when it comes out here, and not the next video, but the one after that. I think. Don't hold me to it, but I think that's how it goes. See how Robin come in and dropped that tree over there? Stevie had the chute cleaned out for him so he could sit there and load Tiny and not have to worry about Robin coming in. But if he'd have backed junkyard in and started loading ahead of time, then Robin would have come in and there would have been a drag or two sitting out there in his way to get cleaned out of the way before he could back in and get the tree dumped where it needed to be. Just little things like that. The guy, of course, all these loggers are experienced loggers. I mean, none of these guys are kindergarten loggers. They're all experienced, and I love working with them because of the, you know, I can go on about that all day. But that guy on a din-din, he's the din-din, and Stevie's job and Big Mama's job, they're high flow jobs, both of them. They're kind of like Grand Central Station. So out in the woods, Stevie's Grand Central Station, and that truck comes in, and in the yard, Big Mama's Grand Central Station, as far as handling Tiny in the log trucks and all this stuff. So neither one of them can really slack off mentally. It's a mental job. It's a good mental job, and it takes a pretty turned on, quick-witted person to do it, because things are constantly changing, and anytime you let the steam run out, you lose your head of steam in the boiler, you'll slow down the actual numbers that we're doing in the woods. You know, I try to keep the cutting power. Here's how I got the cutting power. I try to keep the cutting power excessive. It's like driving trim nails with the sledgehammer. That's how I'm trying to do the cutting power. So, and what me and Derek does is we'll get cut ahead and get a nest egg going, and then go off and do other things. I'm liable to work in the sawmill. Derek's liable to drive truck and stuff like that. But our key job, me and Derek's is as cutters men, is to keep wood to where we can stuff the pipeline. Keep a steady diet of wood to the pipeline, so that way things can stay flowing smooth. That's crucial to make everything work when Stevie and Tiny and Big Mama shows up, you know. So if that helps any. So we got extra cutting power, but one cutter can't keep Stevie going. Two cutters barely can, but two cutters can outrun Stevie by a little bit, but one can't. I can't do it with Brutus, and Derek can't do it with Titus, because they just, through their efficiency and consistency, you can't compete with them. So we like to start with a little bit of a head start, get them a little pile going, and then when they show up, they can be fully efficient and do their thing. Thank you, everybody, for watching this. Leave me likes and comments and stuff like that. And you need anything, go to larderwade.com and scope us out. And come on back for the next video. We'll be on the north side of the property, and we'll be working up there. Thank you.